Hey everybody, welcome to Ronline Report. You saw this guy on MD Global Muscle not that long ago, but since then he has cracked the top 4 at the Toronto Pro. He is moving up in the bodybuilding world. One of my favorite young guys in the sport. Please welcome Robin Strand. What's up, Robin?
Thanks so much for having me, Ron. How are you today?
Doing great. So congratulations. That's a
Thank you
big
so
jump
much.
up. So
Really appreciate that.
your pro placing so far. Let me just get this right. Your pro
Off to a good start.
Yeah, your pro debut was 8 hours after you turned pro, correct? Or 4 hours,
What's
something like
going
that.
on here?
Look, you can't hear me? You're frozen. Yeah, there you go. We're good.
Okay.
So yeah, so pro debut was right after you turned pro, same day back in 2018. I was
Yep.
there. Seventh place, not too shabby. You beat some names actually at that show.
Yep.
Came to New York. You took actually you didn't take any time off. You came back the next year to New York Pro.
That was
And,
yep, I did. Yep. New York Pro. That was technically my pro debut.
okay. And then you came back. Did you not? You haven't competed. You competed last year, didn't you, or no?
I competed in 2021 at the Puerto Rico Pro. I got 8th place.
Okay. So I saw you recently, obviously a couple weeks back in New York Pro, eighth place. I thought you could have been a couple spots higher than that for sure. And
Another
then,
8th place.
when I watched the Toronto on the stream, I thought you were in third place the whole time. Honestly, nothing against Ross. I love Ross's physique too, but I thought you had a little something condition wise. Again, we'll talk about the live stream in a bit. You know, not too disparagingly, I hope. But man, fourth place, big jump up. First of all, you had to be happy with the look because the stream I couldn't tell, but the photos and the videos you were posting, I really got a sense of the condition. You took your conditioning to a whole other level this year.
Yeah, I was super. First of all, I was just so happy that I made it to the stage. But second of all, just to be able to bring that package with the conditioning, with the size, with kind of everything, how it flowed together and how it looked and how it popped with everything from the tan to, how my muscles looked overall. Symmetry wise, I was extremely happy with what I brought to Toronto. And of course, I was really happy to get that moving up and placing and crack the top 4, which was the first time I ever did crack a top 4. So that was a really proud moment for myself and first time I ever brought home some cash money. So that was a really great feeling for me.
Yeah, I mean that's now you are a professional bodybuilder. You're making a little bit of cash doing it. Perfect.
There
So
you go.
before we started recording, as I always do, I try to get some more info so I sound like I'm smarter and I know more about everything and everybody. But you faced some challenges in this prep that I had no idea. The first one I kind of had an inkling because when I saw your front double bicep shots, I said, "Did he tear his bicep?" And sure enough, you said, "Was it 8 weeks out? You tore your bicep?"
Yeah, so 8 weeks out, I did tear my bicep. And, the reason why I didn't want to talk about it was because I didn't want to manifest it into something bigger than it was.
Mm.
So I did tear it. What I did was basically just I didn't train my arms for the entire prep.
Wow.
I just had to manage work around it. I had to change my training up considerably. It really felt like a traumatic injury for me because it was right in the same spot that I had actually broken that arm wrestling when I was 16 years old.
Always
By
arm
a
wrestling.
bully. So basically what happened, just to make a long story short, is when I had the arm wrestling injury, because of the way that it broke my arm and how it healed in the cast, I had actually cut the cast off prematurely and started training. So what had happened is my carry angle on one arm, meaning if I extend my arms out fully, one arm has always kind of been rotated in slightly. So whenever I'm doing a bicep curl or any exercise, really, one arm kind of goes out more where the other one comes in more. And that was just something that is so subtle. I never really noticed. And of course, it didn't really cause any further injury until that one moment when all of a sudden it snapped. And there you go. Now you have that injury. So that was something that I was just like, holy shit, is this going to end my career? Is this going to prevent me from getting on stage nonetheless? But really all I could do in that moment was, okay, well, this has happened. It's out of my control at this point. Not only that, but we were actually filming that day. So it was a really intense day for me.
What were you
And
doing? What were you doing when you tore it?
I was doing pec deck.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez. Wow.
Yeah.
What a way to tear a bicep.
No
Yikes.
kidding. Yeah. So first thing I did was, okay, we got to get through this workout somehow. I'm still being filmed and I just tried to, maintain my composure. But inside I was freaking out. I was really having a real panic attack that was really hard for me to get through those next couple hours of filming because it happened pretty much near the beginning of the workout. Regardless, just tried to, be my best and make it through. And then the first thing I did was call Dr. Khan and say, okay, listen, I got to come over for an ultrasound. Basically, what he said was there was a partial tear on the bicep tendon on the long head. And so, okay, what are we going to do now? We're going to do some BPC, we're going to do some TB500, and I'm going to have to change my training. The next thing I did was I called up my trainer, Eric Seifert, who's also a master of biomechanics and muscle activation techniques. I said, okay, listen, we're going to have to modify some things here. And to be honest, it really helped to kind of reduce my anxiety about the whole situation, that he wasn't worried about it, because I was freaking out. I was like, listen, my life is over here. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And he's like, it's okay. We're just going to have to work around it. And so I basically did as much research as I could. I started, looking up how to, train and how to heal from a bicep injury like that. I talked to some other pros who have experienced similar or same bicep injuries. I asked them what they did. I just kind of picked everybody's brain. I started working with Eric in the gym on a more consistent basis for all of my upper body workouts, so we could modify things from back training to chest training, shoulder training. Basically, everything had to change. And like I said, I wasn't able to directly train my arms. I could train my triceps, but I obviously couldn't train my biceps. So there was a good period of time where, I was pretty worried that it wasn't going to look great on stage. Nonetheless, I told myself no matter what would happen, I wasn't going to quit. So we kept moving forward and my body kept getting better. So I was just, okay, every time I'm doing check-ins, I'm looking better. It doesn't look that bad. So let's just keep working. And over time, I got better. Then, yeah, so then I experienced more challenges along the way, but that was kind of the real big one that hit me.
Well, are you having surgery on it, or it's not torn enough to require surgery?
I think surgery is optional, but it's not torn enough to require surgery. And I think now that I'm able to train it again, I can just basically bring it back on its own.
Okay. Because I mean, are they is it shorter than the other one now, or are they equal?
They're pretty much equal. The thing is it was the tendon like down near the elbow. So the muscle itself functions just fine, but I had to make sure that the tendon was repaired first. So that's where the peptides come into play. And then as long as the thing is because there's other muscles involved around the bicep, like the brachialis, the brachioradialis, the forearm. So a lot of those muscles, they look deflated because I wasn't able to train them. But now that I'm able to train them again, they're looking really good. And even going into Toronto, it was somewhat noticeable because I only had basically 1 or 2 workouts total for that 8 weeks going into Toronto included. But to be honest, I think it looks pretty good now. And with a full off season now that I'm going to go into, I think I'm going to have no problem bringing those arms up, and just that's going to be what I have to focus on, right?
Being an Ontario thing, because Antoine tore one bicep and then he tore the other one almost a year later. And then, of course, Bumstead tore his I think the week of his 4th Olympia win. Didn't seem to stop him from doing anything, did it? But
I think it all comes down to, really what you believe. And if you believe it's going to end you, then that's it. But I told myself that no matter what, I wouldn't quit. And I told myself I'll bring my best. No matter what happens, I was going to bring my best to that stage.
You did, man. You really did. So props to you for mentally not letting that defeat you, because so many people would have been just done. They would have been freaking out and making crying posts on TikTok and YouTube and all this and wow. But you told me about another challenge. I had no idea you were dealing with this. So you told me you were diagnosed 3 years ago, 2020, with celiac disease.
Yeah.
But then you said around the same time you tore your bicep, you realized you had ulcerative colitis. Is that right?
Correct. And I think that those two things were related, because the bicep tear, like I said, it had actually revivified or caused me to relive traumas from when I was 16. I had a lot of things come up to the surface again, even though they were kind of all suppressed. And up until this prep, to be honest with you, Ron, I've always been the type of guy to kind of just push things down. And even with my fiance here, she would always be like, do you want to talk about stuff? And I'd be like, no, I'll just push it down. That was kind of a running joke that we'd had. And she would always tell me, you can't just push things down forever. And I was like, yes, I can. I'm a man. We just push things down. And that was just kind of a joke we always had, right?
Yeah.
But sure enough, after that, it was just impossible to push everything down. And all of these things started coming to the surface. And just to be completely transparent, I've never cried so much in my entire life, but this prep, it just every day was like an emotional roller coaster. And the other thing is, to be honest with you, it actually felt good to release some of that. And it still is being continued to being released from my body. So when I have these emotional releases, I just go with it now because it honestly feels good. And I think that I'm healing because of it. So all that being said, that colitis that I started experiencing after this, I truly believe it was because of that trauma. And looking into the research of colitis and autoimmune disease and irritable bowel syndrome and all these kinds of things, they're all very related. And really a lot of it, even though some of it is related to diet and things like this, it's massively influenced by stress.
Yes.
And if you go even further into it, a lot of it is actually very spiritual because it's related to the chakras in the body, and specifically for something like colitis, related to the solar plexus chakra, which is related to confidence and the way that you think about yourself and self-esteem and self-love. And that has actually been something that I struggled with for a long, long time. So, yeah.
I mean, I think people, if they didn't know what ulcerative colitis was, it's the reason Carlos Thomas Jr. pulled out of the New York Pro, because he was having flare-ups. So he's diagnosed with that. My son has had it for a couple of years that we know of, probably longer than that. And yeah, we've been struggling for the past, I'd say like 3 years to figure out how to keep him from having these flare-ups. And stress does seem to be the major trigger for flare-ups rather than anything dietary. Of course, you have diet ways to manage it with your diet, but stress, which, as a competitive bodybuilder prepping for a show, how do you not have stress? It's pure stress getting ready for a show. Are you on meds for it at all?
I'm not taking any meds. I just saw my doctor, my GP today, and we are going to run some more testing. Basically, we kind of held off on doing any of the intense testing and things like that until after the show. And also just incorporating, pharmaceuticals and things like that at a point where I was so sensitive, and with everything else going on, it just didn't make a lot of sense. So what I did was, in order to mitigate it, I to be honest, I was really experiencing a lot of the colitis symptoms throughout the entire 6 weeks out mark, all the way until the day before the show, the night before the show, and even the day of the show. But I was able to mitigate it with a couple of things. So one, being extremely aware of the foods that are okay and that are not okay, and basically going on almost like an elimination diet and just sticking to like 3 or 4 foods for those last couple of weeks, just every day, really monitoring which ones are okay and which ones are not, and working very closely with Dorian Hamilton, just giving him constant feedback on, okay, we have this in here now, but now all of a sudden this isn't working. We're going to have to pull it out. And then he has to readjust the plan over and over and over again. But we did figure it out enough to, get me on stage looking pretty good.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I did was a combination of meditation, visualization, and that was meditation with going over chakras, going over parasympathetic breath work. So I would do multiple different kinds of breath works and multiple kinds of meditations, visualizations. And over the course of those 6 weeks, I had accumulated over 176 meditations that I found on YouTube. And YouTube is amazing. There's so many things that you can get on there for free. And I just kept adding different ones to a playlist that I would work on daily. And then the other thing that I did was I actually started working with spiritual or energy healers. One of them, which is actually my fiance's mother, and she started coming over to our house and with her friend, and they would work on me in terms of Reiki healing. We would also be drawing things like angel cards. I don't know if you know much about those, but we basically did a combination of spiritual and energy inner work over time that started to change the way that I felt about myself, my confidence, the way that I was breathing. And even though I was still experiencing those symptoms, the way that I felt about them started to diminish from such a negative mindset, like, oh my God, I'm going to have to give up and things like this, to being like, that's fine. This is just how it is. But I'm grateful for the way that my body feels otherwise. My joints are strong, my muscles are strong, and just basically just adopting an intense attitude of gratitude, if you will.
So I'm curious if the foods that you've discovered by your trial and error that are just no good for you anymore, that you can't really eat anymore. What are they?
So yeah, and that's the thing. So from what I know about colitis, and this might be helpful for your son too, is even if you're not in a flare up and you think that things are good, don't go back to those foods that cause flare ups, because it might not happen on the first one, and it might not happen on the second one, but that third or fourth one is going to cause such an intense flare up that now you've started that cycle all over again. And it is a little bit individual in terms of what foods you can and can't eat. But for me, I did a food sensitivity test, and the first one that I found was eggs and egg whites. So there you go, bodybuilder, right? I'm eating eggs and egg whites every single day for the past 10 years.
Wow.
And those were one of my biggest sensitivities. So I had to cut out eggs completely. The food sensitivity test said that most nuts and seeds were okay, but because I have colitis now, having nuts and seeds is not okay. So that's where you kind of have to figure things out on your own. Subtle things like mustard seed. So I was putting, of course, mustard, and that's probably one of the best condiments for a bodybuilder. It's calorie free and we use it all the time. No mustard. And then I started looking at a lot of different herb combinations and seasonings and things like this may contain mustard or contains mustard seed. So I just have to be totally nix those things. They're totally out. The one thing though that I can use, Frank's Red Hot sauce, so I can still put that shit on everything. However, I've cut that out just because spicy things can cause that a little bit too. So just garlic, for example. So it just being careful about anything at this point was crucial for me. And then other things. So on my food sensitivity test, it says whitefish is a good choice for me. But when I take in a certain amount of whitefish, it causes the flare up again. So I stuck to mostly beef, which surprisingly was actually really, really good. But I made sure to always use the highest quality grass-fed beef and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Organic chicken breast, and then salmon. So those are my three main protein sources. Yeah. And then for like whey protein and stuff like that, I would just cut that out. Basically just all sweeteners, cut those out completely. Basically all spices and things like that, just cut those out completely just to be safe. Now I'm starting to incorporate them a little bit, but one thing at a time. In terms of carbohydrates, I was doing a lot of oats and I was doing potatoes, cut those out completely. So now what I do, which I'm very fortunate to be working with a company that creates a really good quality hot rice cereal. So that's Grindstone Blends. And Grindstone Blends uses a combination of white rice and black rice in their formulas. Now, they do have a plain white rice one as well, but the black rice combination with the white rice combination together seems to work the best. So why? I'm still doing research into it, but from what I've figured out, it's got just enough fiber, not too little, not too much. It's got an anti-inflammatory component from the black rice, which is higher in minerals and nutrients and vitamins, which I was starting to miss from my diet from cutting out everything. Yeah. And they also process the rice in a way that it's double processed. So it's like kind of ground down and then it's ground down again, which makes it extremely digestible, but also makes it a nicer consistency when you cook it. So that seemed to just work out perfectly for me. And that was kind of one of the best staples that I could eat that and not have a flare up. Other than that, so cream of rice and then just plain old white rice and sweet potatoes. And that was my carbohydrate sources. And then in terms of fats, just getting it from the salmon, I was supplementing with omega-3s. I was getting fats from the beef. And then I would have small amounts of avocado here and there, and a little bit of either coconut oil or something like a macadamia nut oil. And then that was all the food that I ate for the entire prep.
Yeah. So, I like I said, I'm trying to judge your condition by the stuff you've been posting, because I don't want to disparage Ron. Ron Hachey is a great. I love Ron. I've been to that show a couple times. I love it. But that live stream, it was impossible to judge anybody's condition from that stream, which is why there was a huge outroar when Hassan lost to Ian because people couldn't see Ian's actual condition from that live stream. So they were saying all they were noticing was his calves, his triceps, his chest, whatever, and they didn't realize that he was in much better condition than Hassan because you couldn't tell, and I couldn't tell until you posted your pictures. To me, you looked much crisper and fuller at the Toronto show that you did in New York. So what'd you do in those 2 weeks to improve? And did you intentionally try to peak more for Toronto? Because how do you peak perfectly for 2 shows 2 weeks apart?
So the main thing I think was that when I ordered my food sensitivity test, I ordered it right when I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis around 6 or 5 weeks out. That's when I really figured, okay, this is something serious. I have to go and get this figured out. I ordered a food sensitivity test and it came in after the New York.
Oh.
So going into New York, I was completely guessing. And we were trying to figure out what's going on still in the same time. Okay, well, we're pretty much eating all these clean foods, but the main thing was I was still eating eggs. I might have still been putting mustard on my food. I was still having like almond butter and things like that. So I think those things played a major role. And then the other thing too was this whole experience it just honestly stressed me out. So I wasn't able to mitigate the symptoms as well as I wanted to for New York. And so really no matter what we did, there was just no way to get me full enough for the stage.
Gotcha.
And so I feel like my conditioning was there for New York, but it wasn't really able to shine through as well as it did in Toronto because of the fact that dealing with these symptoms, you're basically losing a lot of fluid constantly, and you're losing a lot of electrolytes, minerals, and vitamins. So combining the symptoms of that with the sensitivities of food choices, I think that was probably the main thing. Because once I got back and I got that food sensitivity test, we cut those things out completely. I had also started researching even more and talking to more people about colitis, and Carlos Thomas Jr. was one of the people that I reached out to, and I got some really good information from him. So shout out to Carlos because he's a great guy, and I really appreciate the fact that he was sharing his personal experiences with me among some other guys who, like you said, this is a pretty common thing. And it's very hard to figure out. And that's why we all need to talk about it and share our own experiences because we can learn from each other. And this is something that we're going to deal with for almost our entire lives, if not our entire lives. Yeah. That's why we got to really hone in. And we, as bodybuilders, we're so disciplined that this is something that we just have to create more of a discipline around. So with that being said, coming back to Toronto and saying, you know what? I did pretty good in New York considering all these things. And it really took a lot of the stress off me knowing that, okay, we've done the hard thing. We've done the travel thing. We got the placing and the disappointing placing. And, we went through the emotional, okay, feel sorry. And I wish I did better. But hey, guess what? I got on stage considering all these things. So now I was starting to build my confidence back. And that's when I really started learning about the solar plexus. So that's when I started doing more of the Reiki. I started doing more of the meditation. And to be honest, what I started doing was I started just resting more. I was training 6 days a week going into that, just pushing my body to the max. And clearly that it got me to a certain point. But I started talking to just people that have more experience than me, people that have been on the Olympia stage. For example, Ben Pekulski. I talked to Ben. He said, you know what, man? I bet you would look better if you took like 3 or 4 days off. And I was like, what are you talking about? I can't take 3 or 4 days off. I'm 10 days out from a show. Yeah. But 10 days out from the show, I had the worst ulcerative colitis flare-up in my entire life. And I don't want to give you too many details, but I thought I had to really go to the hospital one night. And my fiance's freaking out. She's like, I got to take you tonight. And I'm like, no, because if we go tonight, that means that I'm throwing in the towel, and I will not do that. I promised to myself, and I promised to her, and I promised to everybody who was supporting me that I wouldn't quit no matter what. We were going to get through this. And so what I did actually was I started taking Imodium. So that was the one thing. I started taking the Imodium, and I started getting a little bit better and a little bit better each day. And again, working with spiritual healers and working on my self-confidence and self-love, reducing my foods down to just those ones that I told you about and cutting everything else completely, locking in the mindset, working on the breath work and the meditation, reducing my stress in all ways. And again, my fiance was a huge part of that. My entire team helped to mitigate the stress. So I didn't have to think so much anymore. I didn't have to stress myself by, okay, I got to keep pushing, because I had my team members, my trainers and my coach and my girl and everybody else saying, just, you need to relax now, Robin. You need to take a break. You've done everything, man. So just take a chill pill, essentially. So I took that chill pill and guess what? I started looking better. And basically the whole situation was, am I going to bring my best? And that was going to have to come within. And I knew I was going to bring my best, because every day that I would wake up, I looked better. And then every day that I woke up and took pictures, again, better and better and better. Every single day, better. Every single day, better. All the way up until the show, better, better, better. Despite everything else going on, we got on stage and we brought our best. What can I say? It was magical, man.
I'm curious, do you know what you weighed at the Toronto?
So on stage, I was about 252, something like that, going on the stage. So just managing that weight was probably the trickiest part, because overnight I would drop like 5 to 8 pounds, and then we'd eat up, and then I would drop another 5 to 8 pounds. But we knew that there was that weight point where I looked the best, and that was around 255.
Yeah, so 100 pounds heavier than your first show. Wow.
I know, that's mind-blowing to me too.
Oof, jeez.
But for New York, we were under 250, and that was the big thing. We just couldn't figure out how to get that weight up, and it just kept dropping. We figured it out for Toronto. 255 seemed to be where the mark was. Yeah. And I got some really great feedback from Tyler. So when I got off stage, he said, your conditioning and what you brought for the pre-judging was perfect. For the night show, you were flat. And I knew that, because at that point, there was just no way I could eat anything more for that day without setting anything off. So I just had to, take it for what it was. Again, just back to gratitude and enjoy the rest of the day, and just live off the energy and live off the fact that everybody was there cheering me on. And I was proud of myself at that point. So I didn't worry anymore. There was no more stress. There was no more anxiety. Got on stage, rocked it for the finals, a little bit flat. But that flatness, that difference in fullness and flatness, that's really what can affect conditioning at the end of the day. But now that I know how to bring with Dorian and him being there with me in person, we able to really actually get the perfect peak. That's kind of what I wanted. So now going into the next season, we've got a game plan. We're going to heal up. We're going to bring something even better next time.
Did Tyler mention any body parts he wants to see improve, or was he just talking about the fullness and things like that?
Tyler's main concern for me was that he wants to bring up my quad sweeps.
Wow.
That was the thing that he pointed out the most, and he said you really have to bring up the size of your quads, and specifically the quad sweep. He said he wants to see me get more density and thickness in my back and chest, and then he mentioned also, of course, that he wants to see more size in my arms.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't pull punches, Tyler, nor should he. I'm curious, we were sitting and watching judging at the expo? Is it the Arnold, right? It wasn't the Olympia. I can't remember crap anymore. So that
was the Olympia, yeah.
Oh, it was the Olympia. So that was back in. You were very large. What were you weighing back then? I'm gonna guess and tell me if I'm right. Were you about between 295 and 305?
At that time I was 280.
Okay. Yeah,
maybe 285, but I wasn't over that. Yeah.
Okay. But I'm thinking, I don't know when this guy's competing, but what a big meatball. You were twice the size from what I remembered you from a few years back. And we also talked about, I don't know if you talked about this as Giles, but you're the equivalent or very similar to a physical therapist. It's something very similar. What is it that you are now?
Yeah, so physical therapists are what they call in Ontario is a kinesiologist.
Kinesiologist, okay.
So it's basically the same thing. It's like you're a physiotherapist, but kinesiologists don't diagnose. We just treat with physical therapy, And so that's what I do here. I work as an online coach, and I work as a physical therapist / personal trainer at Pure Muscle and Fitness.
What a gym. I mean, yeah, I mean, how many pros are from that Ontario area train out of that gym? It seems like about 10 to 20, if I was guessing.
At least 15, yeah. Yeah, you're
Wow.
right. From the bikini, figure, to open bodybuilders. I mean, we've got everybody, men's physique, classic guys. So in terms of training in Ontario or Canada, really, it's the place to go. So it just seems like, a magnet for pros and a magnet for even fitness influencers. And we do also have a lot of general population people, which is, a lot of people that I work with are just Gen Pop, but everybody that comes to Pure Muscle, they feel like they're part of something that is just so awesome that I feel like even people that have come in there, whether they're overweight or they're self-conscious and they're worried about being judged, when they come to the gym, they're greeted with so much positivity that they don't feel self-conscious. And I think that's one of the best things about that gym is that everybody is welcome and everybody can benefit from the amazing facility and amazing people that are there.
It's in Burlington, Ontario, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So how far is that from like downtown Toronto?
Probably like an hour.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, to me, that means there's probably plenty of parking, so that's a good thing.
Actually, we need way more parking.
Oh, okay. So one thing I was talking about with Giles, and I want you to confirm or deny this. To the bodybuilders in the U.S. from the East Coast, particularly the Northeast, the New York Pro is like their Olympia. That's the title they all dream about winning. They all want the Olympia too, but that's the one they take a lot of pride in. I get the sense, especially from the fact that the Toronto Pro looked like it was about 80% Canadian pros, that show is very important, very prestigious for Canadian bodybuilders, especially the ones from Ontario. Am I right?
I would say so. I mean, for me, like I can only speak from my own experience, but for me, the Toronto Pro being where I turned pro, being where I was born in downtown Toronto. I've always lived in Toronto, only moved to Burlington recently in the past couple of years. And to win the Toronto Pro, it is a dream of mine. Like, however, it's not to say that the night of champions, like we were talking about before at the New York Pro, being besides the Olympia, the longest running show in history for the IFBB. I think both of those titles are neck and neck with terms of prestige. And, I guess for Canadians, it means more to win the Toronto Pro because really at the end of the day, you have everybody that knows you in the scene in Canada there watching you in that moment. And that's a really special feeling. And I'm sure a lot of the New York guys feel the same way about the New York Pro because it's different when the Canadians are at the New York Pro, we feel how much the crowd lights up for the locals. So when we're in Toronto, we get that extreme awesome energy from all the locals cheering for us. And that is just like when you're on stage, it's an indescribable feeling of you're just like, oh my God, I am above the world. Like this is just the most euphoric feeling to have everybody who loves me showing how much they love me all in the same time. And you just feel overwhelmed with love. It's just like, oh my God, like
I mean,
awesome.
I feel like I think I've been to that show 3 or 4 times, but I feel like there's even more local support than there is at New York Pro. I remember the first year I went was 2017. Bumstead had just won the Pittsburgh Pro. That was his first pro win. The week before, I think it was the week before, but he had easily like 100 to 200 people, like friends and family, people that actually knew him, not just fans. He didn't have a lot of fans yet. And my God, they were going nuts for this kid. I was like, wow. And every time I've been to the show, when it's a local person, especially from the Toronto area, the crowd just goes bonkers. I'm like, wow. If I was a Toronto bodybuilder, I would do this show every damn year. Because, geez, look, all that
You know
love.
what? I was actually surprised because the New York Pro, the crowd was pretty good. In Toronto, the crowd was overwhelming. I mean, the whole place was packed from top to bottom, side to side. And there was people like sprawled out on the floor, like laying across, like there wasn't even any chairs left. It was just people like all over the floors. And I'm like on the stage, just like watching people like just laying on the floors and like standing against the walls. And I was like, wow, I'm so happy to be here. That's just all I could think of.
Yeah. How did you feel when you got that first call up?
You know what? I could see my mom. She got out of her chair and she was there in the center for prejudging. I could see my mom, and she was losing it. And that's the second show that she's ever been to.
Wow.
She came to the first show she's ever came to was the Toronto Pro when I turned pro that year in 2018. And this is the second show that she's ever attended. And to have her there, that involved and that invested, the first call up was amazing. But for her to experience that, and for me to feel her pride, that's what did it for me.
Yeah, you made a really cool post. Picture you guys hugging. I assume it was right after the show because, it was a lot of us don't have our moms anymore. So to see someone that still has that bond and everything, it was moving for me to see that. So another thing we talked about is you're 30 years old now, and this is you're entering the prime years as a bodybuilder. This is it. I mean, I feel like 30 to 35, 30 to 40. That's every 99% of every pro bodybuilder. That is their prime, their peak, and you're still getting better and better. I mean, do you feel like you're coming into your own? I think you said now you feel like a real pro, or I can't remember exactly how you phrased it.
Well, I mean, for sure. I mean, really, like when I turned pro and I competed as a pro, I didn't have any delusions that I was going to be winning shows and things like this. This year, I came in with the attitude that I'm going to win a show. I'm going to do something. I'm going to bring home some prize money. I'm going to do something this year. And so that did happen. So that did, okay, like we've arrived. That was kind of the feeling of like arrival a little bit. Now, it's just a personal feeling. It doesn't mean anything to anybody else. But for me, it felt great. And for me, knowing that I've just gotten myself into this window of opportunity from 30 to 35, like you were saying, that's really where most pros are going to reach their prime or their peak. Now, of course, yeah, there's guys that go longer. There's guys that, they reach that earlier potential and things like this. But for me, I feel like this is just my reality now. This is when I've accumulated a lot of the mass. There's still a little bit more to be done, of course, but now it's not like we're not making huge leaps and bounds, adding 20 pounds of muscle over a couple of years. It's slow and steady, and we're really refining things now, and we're adding things strategically. And what it is for me, really, Ron, is it's bringing in like this new level of discipline, and it goes hand in hand with the colitis thing. So it's, hey, look, everything's kind of falling together. The pieces are falling, and the puzzle is all fitting together perfectly because I know that I've been one of the most disciplined athletes, bodybuilders for the past decade. I know that because I've had an eating disorder that has caused me to be this way. It's a choice and it's an identity that I've created for myself, and I wear it like a badge of honor that, I don't cheat on my diet, and I don't fuck around in the off season. And I always take my training seriously, and I push myself to the limit and all that stuff. But guess what? Every pro does that. Every pro pushes themselves near 100%. But I told myself, and even my fiance, she tells me, she's like, you don't have to put so much pressure on yourself. You're always so good on your diet. You're always so dialed in. Yeah, of course I am. But that's 99% because there's always a 1% that you can find from somewhere. So whether that is, I'm having a burger and fries here and there off plan, or, hey, I'm having something that maybe for somebody else, this is a good thing, but I have an autoimmune, I have a sensitivity, I have an inflammation response from these things, and I can see it and feel it, not only in my body, but I can feel it in terms of my mental health. So now we're going down this road of, in the off season, why am I dealing with anxiety and depression every off season? And I feel so good on contest prep, and I couldn't figure this out. Now, it took me a decade to figure out, why do I have mental health issues? Is it because of my past? Is it because of things that have happened to me? Was it my dad? Was it this? It's actually the choices that I was making for myself. It was the inflammation that I was creating within my gut that was causing, whether you want to call it an allergic reaction, or whether you want to call it the gut-brain axis, or all these things that are interlinked. Yeah. But there's enough research that shows you now gluten intolerance related to depression and anxiety. Bottom line. So for someone who has celiac disease, you can get away with, the key word being get away with, but getting away with stuff doesn't lead you to the Olympia stage. The Olympia stage is reserved for those who have taken things beyond the 1%, to the 0.1%, to the 0.01%, and beyond that, because there's only enough room for how many guys are up there? 25 guys out of how many pro bodybuilders? 500? Whatever the math is, right? It doesn't even matter, because all we know is it's the upper echelon.
Yeah.
And in order to get there, for me as an individual, for Robin Strand, it's about that 1% now. So I just have to make those choices, and the choices happen all the time. And I was even talking to Giles about this. Having an eating disorder doesn't go away. When you're addicted to food, you're always addicted to food. It's always lurking in the back. When I'm going to a restaurant now, because we went to a restaurant last night and I ordered plain steak, plain baked potato, nothing on it. But I'm looking at the menu and I'm like, oh my God, I just finished a show. Normally what I would do is I would get whatever I wanted to. It's not an option for me anymore. I'm a different person now. I now identify with someone who is an Olympia level caliber athlete, and I have to be this way. Not that I have to be for any other reason, that I want to be, that I choose to be, that I identify with that now. But again, it's a badge of honor. And not only that, but that's the only way I'm going to heal. So long-winded way of saying, in order to get to the next level, you have to do something different than you've ever done before. You have to be uncomfortable, right? Because if I kept going back to what was comfortable, what made me feel good in the moment, and this is a lesson I think we can all learn from. I think it's incredible, because we all have these goals and these things that we want to achieve that we think that we're not capable of getting to. But the only reason we can't get to them is because we're stuck in our comforts right now. You know, we like watching that hour of TV before going to bed. But what if you didn't watch that hour of TV? You decided to turn that TV off. You decided to go for a walk outside, shut off your phone, the 0 dark 60. You spend that time meditating. You spend that time writing, reading. Then you go to bed. Then you sleep better. And you do that for the course of a year. Now you show up on stage, you're a different person. Well, how did you add that 10 pounds of muscle? It's like, I turned the TV off, man.
Yeah, you know, we're all addicted to these screens. I mean, I watch way too much TV before bed, and it's hard for me to put my phone down. So you speak a lot of truth there, Robin. A lot of us would do so much better in general in life if we could just get away from the screens for an hour or two a day that we're not. So, man, another thing you said that struck a chord with me is, you know, why do you deal with depression more in the off season versus prep? And tell me what you think about this. My theory is that when you're in prep, you have this goal, you have this one day, you have this focus and a purpose. Everything you do, every meal, every hour of sleep, every workout, every minute of cardio is toward that purpose. Whereas in the off season, yeah, you're trying to make improvements on it, but it's not as focused because you don't have that exact day looming in front of you. Do you think that has anything to do with it, or is that not the case with you?
I think that does have something to do with it, but I think it does go deeper than that, because really, when you get off stage, you know, for me, I've completed my season now, but I know what I'm going to do next. I know the date that I'm going to compete next. And let's just say, as a rough estimate, if we were going to compete in a year from now, we've got 52 weeks. So I've pretty much got an exact date. And it's the same thing for amateurs. You know, if I was an amateur doing the Toronto Pro, trying to win the pro qualifier, let's say I got second place. As soon as I get off that stage, I know that I'm going to have to go and do that again next year. So my prep has started again. So realistically, I should keep that same discipline and focus all the way through if it's something that I truly want. This is where I think it gets really interesting, is that what we start to do is we start to go backwards in terms of the habits we've built. So now going into the show, we've developed such great habits. We've probably started to reduce our phone time, and we've probably started to watch less TV. We're going for more walks. We're spending more time maybe in nature. Maybe we're reading more. We're journaling more. We're writing down our goals. We're writing down our manifestation and our affirmations on a consistent basis. Maybe we've adopted meditation. These are all really good habits. We're probably stretching more. We're probably doing more of a warm-up before our workouts. Then, okay, now let's go into the nutritional side of it. We're probably not consuming as many sweeteners. We've probably cut those out at some point. We're probably not consuming very many cheat meals. we're probably cutting out a lot of the foods that are inflammatory to us. And now, okay, now we've gone into the off season, and hey, guess what? I get to have my protein powder back, and I can have my pre-workout powder back, and I have my intra-workout powder back, and I can add my, Crystal Light to my water now, and I can have my Walden Farm syrup, and I can have my XYZ, and the list goes on forever. So now I've got going from 0 sweeteners to 100 sweeteners, and now it's going from 0 cheat meals to, hey, you know what? I could have 2 a week, maybe 3 a week, and maybe you know what? I could even have a cookie in between this meal, and you know what? I might even have just a little bit of ice cream, and you know what? I might even just throw on a little bit of that sugar-free ketchup too, and you know what? Hey, I might even have just some full sugar barbecue sauce because it worked for Ronnie Coleman, and got to get huge, right? And you know what? I might just do a little bit of extra oil here and there, and now all of a sudden, all these habits that we've worked so hard on for the past 4 months, we kind of just let them all slip. And you know what? I'm too busy now. I got to go back to work, and I've taken a lot of time off from that stuff. So I've neglected all these things with my family, and I'm going to have to do that. So now I'm not stretching as much. And, I think it's kind of tedious to have to warm up for 20 minutes before every workout. I'm just going to cut that down to 5. And you know what? I'm just going to go right back to heavy, hardcore, progressive overload training. And I'm not going to worry so much about the details and forget about the meditation and the breath work after the training. I got to go eat and get huge. And my friends are doing stuff. And all that to say is this is a habit building sport. You could almost just call bodybuilding habit building, because that's what ultimately develops you into the bodybuilder you wish to be. And then we just let it all slowly go. We just let it all slowly slip away from us until we're in our peak off seasons. And then we're all full of water, inflammation. We're 300 pounds. We're sleep apnea and breathing like, hard to get up 3 flights of stairs. And we feel fucking great in the gym, but the rest of the time is a struggle. And now anxiety and depression have started to creep back into our lives. And why is that? Why am I dealing with anxiety and depression? Because it doesn't make sense to me, except now that I realize that everything is connected. And now that I realize that all of those things that I was creating that were positive for me, that were these habits that I developed, those were the things that were actually my mental training. Those were the things that were mitigating these mental health issues. And the only reason they've come back is because I've let them come back, and I'm not treating my body with love. So where does anxiety and depression come from? It's a lack of love for ourselves. And we express that through our habits, essentially.
Very insightful, Robin. You are wise beyond your years. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
These are just things that I learned in the past little while, but they've always been floating around in my head. And I'm like trying to put these pieces together, and then bam, you're experiencing trauma, and you're sitting there alone in the middle of the night. You can't sleep, and you're getting 3 hours of sleep, and you're like, why am I here? Why am I sitting on the toilet for 5 hours when I should be just like everybody else? And you realize that, well, we're all very different people, and we all have very different goals and aspirations. And we are the only ones that are living within our bodies, and we have trillions of cells that are communicating with us, but we don't listen to them half the time, even though they're giving us the answers. But now all of a sudden we're forced to listen.
Wow, man. Well, I thank you for all this. I had no idea you were dealing with all that. I suspected something was going on with the bicep, had no idea about the UC. So knowing everything that you overcame during that prep makes me that much more impressed with the package you brought to New York, and especially Toronto. I love watching you climb up the ranks, because you're a very sincere, down-to-earth, hardworking young guy, good head on your shoulders, as we like to say. Always a fan, always rooting for you, Robin. So, have a great off season coming up. I know the best is yet to come. I know this is just a sneak preview, a little glimmer into what you're fully capable of. I think we're still a couple of years away from your final form, and when we see that, it's going to be something truly exceptional. You look very, very good now. Don't get me wrong, but I'm sure we're not quite there yet. We're going to see something even better in the year, 2 years from now. I know it.
I appreciate all those kind words, Ron, and I totally agree with you. What I brought to Toronto it really was just the beginning.
Yeah, I mean that's it. You're in a great spot right now. I'm excited for you. I really am. So you're one of those guys I'm going to be really watching closely. All your updates. I'll be following your off season. Strand Strong on Instagram, guys. You can follow him too. Is that your YouTube channel too?
YouTube channel, you can just go IFBB Pro Robin Strand. or you can go youtube.com/Strand Robin.
Cool, man. Well, that's it, man. Thank you so much for taking the time, Robin. Congratulations on the placing. Very well deserved. And yeah, the best is yet to come for you. No doubt. No doubt in my mind.
Thank you
So,
so much, Ron. I'm so grateful to have that conversation with you. And, you know, I really, really enjoyed that. And I always enjoy having conversations with you. So thanks for having me on. And yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting again in the future very soon.
right on. All right, everybody, subscribe to the channel if you like the video. Do that like thing, share the video, turn your notifications on, do all that good stuff. We appreciate it. This has been the Ronline Report with rising star from Canada, Robin Strand. We'll see you next time.
No bull.
Hey, did you like that video? Smash that like button, subscribe to MD, and please comment down below. Thanks for watching.